for one night and we just wanna party. In a fast car, a Ferrari. It's a push start, I don't need a car key. Slide on Broadway, and it's gnarly. On a late night, but I'm not tardy. Right on time for the parties and Barbies. Strolling with a truck of green like a golf swing.
Okay, everybody. Sorry I'm 5 minutes late or so. It's been a crazy morning here. Welcome to Resistance Live. It's the 3rd of September, 2024. And first things first, we're going to talk about what happened on Labor Day because Trump is missing from the campaign trail, and it's extremely noticeable at this point. I have some theories about why this is the case, but we'll get to that in a minute. First things first, I'm coming to you as always from occupied Muncie, Lenape, and Mohican land. Gratitude to the original custodians of the land on which I live and work. Today, for our visually challenged viewers, I'm wearing a black sleeveless top. I have my gold floral hoops in. They're not hoops, they're gold, just big gold flowers. And I am in front of an oak cabinet and a plant. I'm a pink-skinned, green-eyed, dirty, blonde-haired woman, and my pronouns are she, her. Hi. I hope you all had a great Labor Day weekend. So just so everybody's clear on what's going on right now, yesterday was Labor Day. And we saw an incredible barnstorm by Tim Walz and Doug Emhoff and Kamala Harris and Joe Biden through hardcore labor union strongholds, talking about the importance of working people in this country. And if you missed it, there was a whole series of speeches that were truly impeccable. The one that I keep coming back to is the one that Tim Walz gave, which, by the way, took place after there had been an accident in his motorcade. Fortunately, not him, but where a few folks were injured. Tim Walz went to the hospital to make sure that the people in the motorcade were okay. Like, we know he's a good guy. And then he went and gave this incredible speech about how Trump says he's for working people. But here's all the things that Project 2025 would do to working labor. It would end the 40-hour work week. It would end workplace safety protections. It would prevent people from having paid leave. It would eliminate the Affordable Care Act. There's an entire series of things that contradict what Trump claims to be in the form of like a guy for the working man, right? Meaning like working white men. And I think that Tim Walz has become this incredible antidote to the propaganda that the Trump campaign has been spewing. So we saw Kamala Harris and Joe Biden speaking yesterday in an incredibly heartfelt speech, if you missed it, where Joe Biden talked about why he had chosen Kamala Harris as the VP and how she was ready to be the president on day one. And, you know, it continues to just be amazing how much love is shared between those two people in the face of all the hate and rage that we see from Trump and his campaign. So Trump was nowhere to be found on Labor Day. And this in and of itself is the sign of a few things. And I want to just make a couple of comments about this because I think it's really important for us to all understand that there are probably multiple layers of things going on here, but the Trump campaign is essentially imploding. There are indications that they are withdrawing from states that they previously thought they had won because they don't think they can win anymore. One of them particularly being New Hampshire. There are indications that they don't have the money to support the ground game that they would need to win, even in battleground states. And then they're dealing with the candidate himself, who, you know, has given, for those of you who missed it, he gave a truly insane live interview at the end of last week where he claimed that teachers were performing gender reassignment surgery on middle schoolers in schools in America. With no pushback, of course, because it was a far right-wing media interview. The things that are coming out of his mouth continue to be more and more insane and more obviously insane, even to his base. And so my suspicion is that Donald is missing in part because he's completely uncontrollable at this point. And every time he goes out to talk to anyone, he sounds like an insane, screaming, racist grandpa on the porch of his home, telling people to get off his lawn. So we're in a situation right now where, and I have warned people about this for a very long time, but I just want to make it really clear. It's going to get even more crazier from here on out. And one of the things that's very clear is that the Trump campaign doesn't have anything left to run on from a policy standpoint, from a position standpoint, from a platform standpoint. And the only thing they have is essentially like racist attacks against Kamala Harris and propaganda. And we're going to see quite a bit more of this, and probably at an even more insane level. That's, I've said this for a long time, but between now and November. My real question right now is, are we going to see Donald Trump on the campaign trail at all? Are we going to see more than one event a week? Because in all the ways that mainstream media likes to game this as if it's a traditional horse race, it is extremely unusual, even in a campaign with a person at the head of it as mentally unfit as Donald Trump, for the candidate to not be campaigning 8 weeks out from Election Day. It's very strange. And I do think that it's going to start raising some questions about what's really going on there, right? And my hope is that at some point, I've given up all hope on the New York Times, but my hope is that at some point we'll see legacy media start to ask questions about where he is and why he's not showing up and why we're not seeing him interact and why we're not seeing him on a dais talking, doing a regular campaign stump speech. His incapacity continues to get more and more obvious, and his insanity continues to get more and more obvious. And I do think the humor is working, so keep laughing at him. But all that said, it should be raising at this point very significant questions about what's going on with him as a candidate. And those are legitimate questions that should be asked, if only to hammer home the point that there is no question when these two candidates are stacked up against each other, even for people who are undecided or disengaged voters, about who the right choice really is. Okay. So we'll have to see what happens next on this, but nobody's seen or heard from this guy on a campaign stop for the better part of 10 days now. It's very odd. I mean, I think he had one speech last week and that was it. Okay. We had some questions about what's going on in the Judge Chutkan's courtroom with regard to immunity and the like. So late Friday night, midnight, I love it when lawyers wait until the last minute. A joint scheduling report was filed with Judge Chutkan as required by her court order. And essentially, they didn't come to any resolution about what they want. Trump's team wants, of course, to delay everything out until January. Jack Smith's team wants to file all sorts of motions front-loaded and then wants an opportunity to essentially set everything up for trial and more or less make it as easy on Judge Chutkan as possible to make sure that there is no need for any decision on immunity because of the superseding indictment. Now, there are folks on the Patreon feed this morning. Reminder, you want to ask me questions before every broadcast, you can become a paid subscriber at patreon.com/resistancelive for as little as $5 a month. That's less than 20 cents a broadcast. This morning, there were people who had listened to another podcast that I'm not going to name, where apparently the host said something along the lines of, an interlocutory appeal is going to be granted on this. Okay, so let me just say this, okay? For those who don't know, let me put on my ex-Columbia Law School professor hat for a second and explain interlocutory appeals to you in federal court. So interlocutory appeals are an appeal that takes place in the middle of a case, not at the end, which is ordinarily where all appeals are supposed to happen. After there's been a jury verdict, then appeals can take place, okay? Interlocutory appeals are strongly disfavored in federal court, okay? You have to have essentially extraordinary circumstances for the trial judge, because it is within the trial judge's decision-making authority first to allow an issue to go up on what's called an interlocutory appeal, a mid-case appeal, okay? Now, there is another podcast this morning that is claiming that an interlocutory appeal is absolutely going to be granted. I disagree with that. And let me just tell you why, okay? Judge Chutkan, when she got this case back from the Supreme Court, was like, let's go. Scheduled an order date right after she got the case back, within 5 days of when she wanted to know scheduling from the parties. Jack Smith said, no, we want to delay till the end of August because we didn't know at that point that he had impaneled a new grand jury to get a superseding indictment against Donald Trump that eliminated anything having to do with presidential immunity. She's not going to want to wait. And personally, because interlocutory appeal is within, generally speaking, the discretion of a trial court judge with very limited exceptions, I don't see that she has any reason to grant this one if the superseding indictment truly does not involve any issues of presidential immunity at all. And this is one reason why Jack Smith is a genius. We talked about this last week. Why Jack Smith has done absolutely the right thing here. Because if he can present to Judge Chutkan, as he can now, an indictment that does not in any way, shape, or form touch upon presidential authority, she doesn't even need to address the issue. And so one of the things that is being set up here now that I think we need to kind of consider is that we may have a situation here where Judge Chutkan is like, let's go. And personally, I think that the idea of this, including potentially having evidentiary hearings in October, makes a huge amount of sense. Okay, this is a case where, indictments have been pending for more than a year now. And there's a desperate need for the case to move forward in the interests of justice. All right. So we will have to see, again, what happens here from the standpoint of what Judge Chutkan decides to do. But am I at this moment terribly concerned about the prospect of an interlocutory appeal? I'm just going to be really honest with you. No, I am not. And I'm sure Trump's people will try to get one. Do I think it's likely to be granted? No, I don't. And I think part of that is because Jack Smith has done absolutely the right thing here to move things in the right direction. So, look, that's where that stands. And again, I have to remind you all, 15 years as a federal court trial litigator, litigation is unpredictable. We do not know what the outcome is going to be. We don't know what the judge is going to decide. Anybody who's saying anything to you, and myself included, is gaming this on the basis of what is hopefully their own personal experience in federal court. Reminder, not every commentator out there who's talking about this is a lawyer. And you have to be a little careful about where you're getting your information, even from big names, all right? But I do really feel very strongly here that an interlocutory appeal is less likely than not, all right? And again, we'll have to see what happens on this front next, okay? There was another question related to this, which was a very good one, which essentially was this. What is the way around presidential immunity, assuming that we get the House, the Senate, and the presidency this year? All right. So let me just explain this. While the decision on presidential immunity from the Supreme Court was allegedly grounded in constitutional law, okay, there is nothing, and this is one of the reasons why a lot of people were really, really upset about the way this decision went down. There is nothing in the Constitution that says that presidents have immunity for official acts taken within the scope of their authority, including conversations with the Department of Justice while they're trying to overthrow a federal election. Okay. The reason why that matters is that we don't actually need, there's other lawyers are going to argue with me about this, but I'm just going to tell you this is my opinion. And I will remind you all that like a big, huge area of my focus as a trial lawyer and in my pro bono work was constitutional law. There is a basis to argue here that legislation could be passed at the federal level that eliminates presidential immunity, meaning that any act taken by a president can be prosecuted if it's criminal after that president leaves office. So let me just explain this to you, all right? If the House and the Senate are in the hands of the Democrats and there is the political will to do it, and we have enough senators on our side of the fence who will destroy the filibuster through the nuclear option. Reminder, that's a rules change, okay, where we have to have a simple majority to change the rules to eliminate the filibuster. It's exactly what happened, by the way, that eliminated the filibuster on judicial appointments. If we have enough political will to do that, a law could be passed that could be signed by President Harris, eliminating presidential immunity for criminal conduct after the president leaves office, meaning like any conduct committed that's criminal can be prosecuted after the president leaves office. A law like that could be passed. And I will tell you that my suspicion about this is that assuming that we win by a landslide, there will be legislation like that introduced. And yes, it will be tested in the courts. Yes, there will be some far-right group that files in front of Kaczmarek in Texas and tries to get the whole thing ruled as unconstitutional and defying Supreme Court authority. But you know what? That sort of thing has happened before. And that doesn't necessarily make the law itself unconstitutional, okay? So once again, I want people to grasp that the totality of the judicial and democratic reforms that we need in this country are at stake in this election. It's not just about Trump versus Harris. It's about whether or not we can actually rectify the things that led us to a Trump presidency in the first place. And I mean that in terms of root causes, like white supremacy, patriarchy, xenophobia, hate crimes, right? All the way through to things like, how do we close a loophole on presidential immunity? How do we get the John Lewis Voting Rights Act passed, right? How do we make sure that the Equal Rights Amendment is restored to the prospect of being a constitutional amendment? There's all sorts of things that are at stake here. And none of this can be rectified if we do not take back the House and also hold the Senate with a majority that's willing to tank the filibuster. Okay. So this, once again, is one reason why I have to remind you all that it is not just about the presidential election this year. And when you are thinking about the ways of moving forward in your own voter mobilization work, even if it's the first time you've ever done it, I want to encourage you to volunteer not just for Harris Walz, but also for candidates for the House, candidates for the Senate, and candidates at your state and local level who are going to be responsible for making sure that your vote is counted. Okay, so we've got to hit all the fronts here in order to accomplish what we want to accomplish on this basis. Okay. Speaking of which, I want to mention something very important here. There is a call on Thursday, which I hope you will all join me for, that it starts at 12 noon Eastern on behalf of Democrats abroad. You may not be a Democrat living abroad, but I'm just going to shout out all of our regular viewers here in places like Bangkok and Cape Town and Brittany in France and Sweden, and in the multitude of you who watch every day from the UK, the multitude of you who watch every day from Australia. There is a real push right now to increase the number of Democratic votes from Democrats living abroad. Why? So here's a stat that's really interesting. Only 14% of the 6.5 million registered voters of Americans abroad, voted in the last election. Okay. Half of those were from battleground states. If we can increase the number of people voting abroad by even 1 to 2%, and we do everything we need to do inside the United States, this election becomes a landslide win for Harris Walz. So if you know someone living abroad who could potentially vote, you need to get on this call. If you are someone living abroad, even if you're not an American citizen, if you know Americans, you need to get on this call. Okay. And if you're somebody who cares about making sure that the international vote is counted in this election, you need to get on this call. So why am I telling you about this call? I'm going to be speaking on it, but over the weekend, the speakers list exploded. So joining me on this call, and I'm a little like gobsmacked by this, is Speaker Emirata Nancy Pelosi, Beto O'Rourke, Cory Booker, Ruben Gallego, David Hogg. We're also being joined by people like Jane Fonda and Alfre Woodard and Kira Sedgwick and George Conway. So, again, anybody can join this call. Doesn't matter if you're an American citizen or not, you can join this call. What I want people to understand here is that the reason why this push is happening is because the voting bloc of Democrats abroad could make or break this election. And it is beyond important that we get involved in not just mobilizing the vote where we live, but mobilizing the vote internationally if we have any means to do it. Okay. And I'm saying this because there are so many of you on this call who watch it every day from overseas. And I know you know people. I know you know other people who are voting from abroad. And so please, let's get involved in this effort. And, the link to that, I will make sure is dropped into the show notes. I will also put it up here once the broadcast is over for those of you who want to register directly. But it is critically important that we push forward on every front, right? Presidency, House, Senate, state, local elections, and internationally. And internationally has been the forgotten bailiwick of lost Democratic votes for a very long time, no longer. The DNC is in this, right? The whole reason why all these wonderful people are on this call and coming together for this is because this voting bloc matters an enormous amount in this election. So please get involved. Please get involved. All right. And reminder, if you happen to be living abroad and you are a registered voter, or you used to be a registered voter because you can still register to vote, please go to votefromabroad.org to make sure that your international ballot gets to you in time. You have until September 21st to do that. All right. So don't neglect it. Don't neglect it. Get your ballot from where you previously resided inside the United States. Make sure you mail it back in time. Critically important, critically important. Okay. All right. Final thoughts for today on a couple of just like related issues here. All right. So we're going to continue to see this enormous mobilization by the Harris-Walz campaign everywhere. There was some very good breaking news this morning that the Harris-Walz campaign has so much money. I was so happy about this. Like, I'm just so happy when we're well-funded that they are dedicating $25 million to down-ballot races. By the way, this is what good presidential candidates do. They don't like send their daughter-in-law in to run the whole show and grift money off the national campaign structure and then allow her to release completely tone-deaf music videos in the process. Sorry, I'm on a tangent about Lara Trump. If you haven't seen the one with the screaming goat, go watch it. You'll cry laughing. In any event, what they do is they take that excess of money and they dedicate it to races that are needed to give the presidential candidate the mandate that they need when they're elected to get the work done. Okay. So there's an enormous amount of mobilization happening right now out of Harris-Walz. This includes ground game campaigns happening everywhere. There was an anecdotal report that I have not yet been able to confirm. I'm just going to warn you all of this because you all know I like to be on top of my sourcing here. But there's an anecdotal report that there is expansion happening in the Harris-Walz ground game in Florida. You'll all remember that I've been saying here for a very long time that Florida is in play in this election. It's shocking. I know. I mean, maybe not if you remember Bush v. Gore, because, you know, like Florida determined that election by like 538 votes. It truly used to be a swing state. But we're in a situation right now where there seems to be, even in places like Florida, a groundswell of support for Harris-Walz, and that the Harris-Walz campaign structure is responding to that. Also just saying things. One other thing, I'm hearing some good things about Texas. I'm not holding my breath, but I'm hearing some very good things about Texas right now, including Colin Allred's campaign, which you all have to support. The other thing that I just want to mention here today is one other thing. When we're talking about the Senate, and we're talking about how, and I've expressed this several times over the last couple of weeks, that I have some concerns about the Senate right now, okay? It is of critical importance that if you know anyone who lives in Maryland, or you live in Maryland yourself, that you are talking to everyone you know about the importance of voting for Angela Alsobrooks. Because even this morning, there are some former Republicans who shall remain nameless who are out there asking questions about like, is Larry Hogan really that bad? Larry Hogan wants a national abortion ban. The entire makeup of the Senate could turn on the Maryland Senate race, okay? And so please make sure, this is another shout out, by the way, to the fact that historically, Black and female candidates are underfunded as in relation to white candidates, simply because of like, you know, pay gaps and the like. If you have to choose between where you're going to send your money, please choose a candidate that would be historically underfunded, like Angela Alsobrooks or Colin Allred or Debbie Murcassel-Powell. All right. Make sure that you're making donations that will move things in the right direction. But that race worries me a lot. And I truly love Angela Alsobrooks. I know I've mentioned her several times over the last several weeks, but like that's a race that has to be won. It has to be won. And I would like everyone, if you've got, you know, there was a question on the Patreon feed this morning, was like, how do I make a donation that I know goes to all Democrats? You can't do that. Even if you donate to the DNC, they're going to decide how to funnel their money. And often the DNC has made decisions that people have looked back on in hindsight and said, I don't know why they did that. Right? Where they say, well, that race is unwinnable. We're not going to give that candidate any money. Right? They did it in Katie Porter's first race, for instance. And she won. So, you know, one of the things that I want people to think about here is that you've got to think about putting your money into races where it's really going to have the most impact. And those are races like Angela Alsobrooks' race in Maryland. Okay. Donate directly to her through her campaign website. Yes, John Tester needs the money, 100%. He's like behind and he absolutely needs the money. And I also want to just say this, okay? Like, reminder, we need more Black women in the Senate. And we need, like, you know, Ted Cruz to go home. We also need Josh Hawley to go home. You all know, I can give you guys all the list again. I mean, I did the list last week, but there's an enormous number of Democrats that need to move in the right direction in terms of funding right now for the Senate. Okay. So critically important that we stay focused on that. All right. It's going to be a really interesting week. I have to say, you know, reminder, we're like full bore into campaign season right now. We are literally like down to, I think it's 63 days to the election itself. Okay. November 5th. This is the time to really put the pedal to the metal, my friends, make sure that you are doing your volunteering and your door knocking. Oh, let me raise one other thing here, by the way, because there was one other question this morning on the Patreon feed about door knocking. And it was really misleading, not intentionally, but I want to just make something really clear. Okay. So the question essentially went like, oh, I was going to door knock, but then I was told by somebody who did it that essentially you're just door knocking on doors that have already been knocked on. And you're really annoying people who are getting like, 4 phone calls a day and text messages and blah, blah, blah. Okay. What a lot of people don't understand is that there is software that is being used by campaigns. This is not like door knocking of old 20 years ago where you had a list and you went down and you checked off the list when you did it, right? It's not like that. The software that is available now to campaigns contains data on who is registered in what house and whether or not they are likely Democrat, leaning Democrat, and whether or not, most importantly, they have been canvassed before. Okay. You should not, if you are working with a campaign that has their data and their software operations in the right direction, be door knocking someone who has been door knocked before. Okay. Unless it's somebody who was door knocked and was like, yeah, I'm not really sure who I'm going to vote for. That person, by the way, when you door knock, you can put in data. You can put in I talked to this person. They're not really sure how they're going to vote. I'm a little concerned and they might need a follow-up. That person might get a follow-up. Okay. But if your house has been door knocked and you say to the door knocker, I'm 100% in for Harris Walz, you should not be getting another door knock. All right. So let me just say this. Do not neglect door knocking. I mean, and again, I have to say that this is one of those things where when I see people saying things like this, it really worries me, because what the data shows is that one-on-one face-to-face conversations are more likely than any other method to get people into the ballot box, right? To get people into the voting booth rather, and to get their votes into the ballot box. Those face-to-face conversations are the most impactful part of get out the vote work. That, by the way, is not just about door knocking. It's also about talking to your friends and your family and your neighbors. The face-to-face conversations are what gets it done. So if you have the ability to door knock and you have the inclination to do it and get trained to do it, you should go do that. Don't do it because one of your friends said, somebody told me they'd already gotten 4 text messages. So what? We need every vote. And I personally get slammed. I'm not even joking about this at this point. I probably get 20 fundraising emails a day from candidates around the country because I've given so much money to the DNC and to individual candidates historically. And I don't donate to 99% of them. All right. But am I bothered by it? Not particularly, not in this election cycle. Right? I get that this is what a good ground game and a good digital game is about. Okay. So do not avoid knocking doors because one of your friends said, somebody told me they'd already been door knocked. People are not going to get annoyed at you fighting for Kamala Harris if they're already on board for Kamala Harris. Okay. I mean, seriously, this is a campaign that is based on hope and love and positive movement and the future and a better America. Everybody that I know who I've talked to about it is hell yeah. Let's go. I wore my Kamala hat out to get my kids ice cream yesterday. And there were 3 people who were I love your hat. I love your hat. So, seriously, this is a moment to not slow down. Do not slow down. Yeah. And, Minivan and Reach. Yes. Thank you, Julie, for mentioning them, are the platforms that are used most often by Democrats with regard to data. And they really do assure that people are not getting door knocked so much that it's annoying. All right. Don't take your foot off the gas because why? When we fight, we win. Okay. One last mention for today. You have 1 week left to get in on our new class. Say it now. For those who are interested in door knocking, interested in becoming a part of voter mobilization face-to-face, or even just in terms of text banking and phone banking, this course is one you're not going to want to miss. Registration closes a week from today at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. And we are going to teach you everything you need to know about political messaging for everyday people. We still have a few scholarships available, by the way. Those of you who have applied for scholarships, we're processing them. We're rolling out acceptances as we get them and after we've reviewed applications. And some of you are getting partial. So just stay tuned for that. It's coming. But we do have a few scholarships left, a very limited number of slots. And I want to encourage everybody who can join us to join us. There is a payment plan available. This course is going to kick some serious booty. I think we're coming up on 100 registrants right now between the scholarships we've given out, which is a lot, and the folks who have actually registered. And it's going to be a very good class full of very good people doing all the right work. So please consider joining us if you have not yet registered for that. 4 weeks, everything from very high level messaging down to issues-based messaging. And we're going to teach you everything you need to know about how to talk to people about everything. Is it generic? Yes, a Canadian can get something good from it too, absolutely. And if you're working against the far right in Canada, you should feel free to join us, because everything that we talk about in this election is going to be mappable onto the work that you're going to do in Canada and yours. Okay, I hope to see you all on Thursday on the Democrats Abroad call. Again, I will drop a link to that in the show notes. And I'm here for the rest of the week at regular time. And let's get the work done. All right, everybody. Much love to all of you. I hope you have a fabulous Tuesday. The weather here in the Northeast is utterly gorgeous. So get outside if you're around here and enjoy that like very early fall weather, because we all could use a little bit of touching grass from time to time. And I will catch you all here tomorrow. All right. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great day. Bye.